What a year. What a year it's been. 2023 actually is ending in just a couple of days. And with it begins my 6th year on YouTube, and that's actually kind of wild. But after a year filled with so many hard structured videos, I kind of wanted to end this one with a bit more of a laid back Q&A video, much like I did last year. But there is something for me, at least when it comes to sitting down in front of a camera without any real direct idea or plan for what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say, that does make me nervous. Palms sweaty, mom spaghetti, that old chestnut. But I did bring a beer like I did last year, so hopefully that'll take the edge off a bit. That's for the ASMR folks out there. Anyway, as one does, I put out the call for questions on Instagram, and as always, y'all delivered. So I ended up narrowing them down to about 10 or so questions that I felt covered a wide variety of topics that were more interesting to maybe a broader YouTube audience. Things like my favorite and least favorite gear of 2023 and my predictions for 2024, and a good handful of treats sprinkled in between. So with all that out of the way, we're going to dive into the first question, and to just kind of get the blood pumping, we're going to start off with a bit of a softball, shall we? And the first question comes from Sleep Well Dawn, and they ask, what piece of gear surprised you the most this year? And now this may be recency bias because it just was maybe a month ago that I reviewed this, but the 9 Barista, I think, was probably the most impressive piece that got me this year. I think from the simplicity, the build quality, the ingenuity, and of course the finished product of the espresso it produced, it's just a mocha pot on a whole nother level. And I'm sure they don't even like being compared to a mocha pot because really they're not all that comparable outside of just the general function from hot water on a stove, and that's basically it. But I think it's just a great piece of kit. But I'm not going to rehash the whole review. Of course, if you want to check that out, you can. But I do think that they're going to see more of the 9 Barista next year. I do plan on doing a video with it, but I'm not going to spoil what that is. So you're going to have to stick around to find out. And of course, on top of that, you can see more of my masculine good looks and boyish charms. Next question. Kay Alvey asks, did you change your mind in something related to coffee this year? And this may be fudging the dates a little bit because it was probably towards the very end of 2022 when I received the L'Elite Bianca. And it sort of began this turning of the tables for me when it comes to my thoughts on E61 groups. Now, I don't think they're the best group design. Personally, I don't love the look of them, but I've really grown kind of accustomed to the general fit and usability wise. The engineering is like very simple. I do love that there's just so much information out there on them. They're relatively simple to work on. And you can add things like flow control with minimal effort and cost. So I have sort of turned the corner on my feelings on E61 groups, though they still aren't my favorite. Anyway. Next up is a bit of a twofer because I did get a couple questions covering basically the very same topic, but they're just slightly different. So I thought I'd answer them both together. And the first one, Mike Boyack asks, are co-ferments cheating? And Tyson BJ asks, co-ferments thoughts? So I figured I'd just knock these two out together. So on the first one, are co-ferments cheating? I guess my question would be, who's being cheated? Is it the roaster? Is it the supplier? Is it the customer? I just don't see that really happening because co-ferments are generally more expensive. So to pass it off as a normal coffee, a normal processed coffee, and pay that normal processed coffee price, I think the farmer is losing out because I think they're relatively expensive on the processing side, on the farming side. And just so everyone's on the same page, a co-ferment coffee basically means that the coffee beans itself during the processing are co-fermented with something else. And oftentimes it's like cinnamon sticks or strawberries or mango or passion fruit or something like that to impart the flavor of that specific item into the coffee itself. So I can see that there are probably some people who consider it cheating. I just don't see who's being cheated. I'd love to hear your thoughts on who's being cheated in that whole thing. Is it Mother Nature? I don't know, but I don't think they're cheating. And in terms of thoughts, I've had quite a few this year. I actually can think of, I think, 4. So I had a peach co-ferment early on in the year. I had a grape, I had a strawberry, and right now I'm sipping on a passion fruit co-ferment that I have from my friends at Dark Horse. Some are good, some are bad, some are just okay. And I think it really depends on the fruit and your personal tastes and your palate. For me, the strawberry and the grape were good, they were interesting, but they also weren't very complex. And I think that's where co-ferments for me sort of aren't something I really love, because the fruit really overpowers all the other flavors, all the complexity in the coffee naturally. So then you end up with a cup that has a very, very intense flavor in one direction and not really much else. So that's my biggest issue with co-ferments, though I do think they are good. I think they have a place in coffee. It's just another form of processing, and I think people should enjoy them or don't enjoy them. It's up to you. And next up, Johnny Boy 621 asks, what has been your favorite coffee company this year? Now, I can take this in 2 different directions. If I'm thinking about a favorite coffee company in the terms of like maybe the frequency of the times I buy their coffee or I had their coffee on bar, I think Necessity would have to be probably up there, because I had their coffee around on my bar, on my shelf behind me for quite a bit. If you saw pink boxes back here on the top shelf, that's Necessity. And I was drinking a lot of them over the course of the year. But from there, if we're talking about a coffee company from a cafe perspective, from a whole cafe experience, I'd have to say Proud Mary. When I went to Portland for SCA back in April, just that whole experience at Proud Mary was just so good. It's very rare, at least in my experience, here in San Diego or in many other places around the country I've been to, where you get such a dialed in coffee program mixed with a really like gourmet adjacent food, if not gourmet generally. And I just found Proud Mary to be exceptional in all of those categories. So if we're talking about buying boxes, again, Necessity. If we're talking about a cafe experience, Proud Mary. All right, so now we're getting into some heavy hitters. And this one is from Barista's Brew. And they ask, you've reviewed a lot of things. What's your favorite gear release of 2023 and least favorite? So I'm gonna go with my least favorite to start, and then we can have my favorite for dessert. So my least favorite, off the top of my head, I have to say waffle baskets. And again, this is very much a personal thing for me, where they were very expensive, but they didn't really seem to provide any benefit to me. I tried all of them. I gave them a good old college try, so to speak, but I just didn't feel like they were doing what I wanted them to do or what I hoped they would do. And I think a lot of that kind of falls back on Waffo as a company, because they're just extremely vague. I think part of my review, and I did a full video on this if you want to check that out, of course, but their website was just like, very unclear. We look at directions on how to use it, and it was very specific, but also kind of unclear at the same time. Like you'd look at a basket and you'd say, what's this basket good for? And it says, well, it depends on your passion. What does that even mean? So I just felt like I tried a lot of different ways to brew with them. I tried a lot of different shots. I tried a lot of different baskets, and the quality of them is nice. The build material, all that stuff's great, but the product just didn't work for me. And of course, as promised, the dessert, my favorite piece of gear that I reviewed in 2023. And of course, I'm narrowing it down very specifically to something that was built and received in 2023, and that would be the Time War Sculptor. I think that in terms of the cost benefit ratio, that's probably, as I said in the video, the best budget grinder out there. In their Kickstarter for sure, because of the price was pretty achievable. And also it had RPM control. It had a pair of burrs that were really nice. Also it has the right size burrs, at least right size, I'm saying, and 64 millimeter, because there's just so many options out there. And it just is a nice looking piece of equipment. So for me, it hit just every single little checkbox of a quality piece of equipment. And I just really liked the espresso that came from those burrs too. They were just really nice shots. So that's got to be my favorite gear release of 2023 proper. And the next question, it sort of ties into that one sort of in an ancillary kind of way, but MP Cohagen asks, what's the most overrated coffee trend of 2023? And for me, that's very easy. And again, this is a very personal experience. Some experiences may vary, but I definitely found the high flow basket trend to be overrated. Now, I tried quite a few of them. Again, I tried the waffle baskets that we just talked about. And I think the traditional high flow style baskets that they produced, the early waffle baskets, were probably my favorite of their whole line, but still not great. And when I can get similar results from just a basic Pullman basket with a paper filter that cost me $25 or $30 versus a $200 basket, it's just really hard to shell out that money for the results. And for me, the results of high flow baskets just weren't really worth the price of admission. Again, this is my personal experience based on my palate and my experience testing these baskets, but I just didn't find them to be as worth the hype and the trend that they had started. And we have just another heavy hitter here. So Rodoc asks, if you could change one thing about the coffee scene, what would it be? Now, there's a lot of things I could say on this, but coming from my personal perspective, I feel like I would love to see coffee become less of a team sport and more open to other people's experiences and opinions. I think as a creator, and I'm sure I'm speaking for other creators in the same space, where if you have an opinion that maybe some other creator doesn't agree with, you're going to have a bunch of people coming through and being like, well, so-and-so says this, you say that, who's the wrong one? And in a lot of cases, there isn't a wrong one. And with coffee, it's such a personal, preferential based experience. And to say something specific, like a recent experience I had where someone came into a comment section and was like, well, so-and-so says that pre-infusion and like a 6-bar shot tastes the same as a 9-bar shot according to a scientific experiment. And sure, you could say that, but that completely negates the fact that in my experience, they taste very different. Now, if that's in my head, that's all fine and dandy, but I can't help but think it's not. And it's just that constant pushback on opinions. And it really kind of pushes back on people wanting to actually share their thoughts and share their opinions. I can't imagine the number of things that we lose as a coffee community out there of people having new ideas and new takes on things that get pushed back and suppressed because they're afraid to look stupid. So I think the main story here, or the TLDR, is I'd just like to see a reduction in that like team sports attitude, the parasocial relationships with coffee creators or coffee researchers, and more of an acceptance of personal opinions and preferences. Next up, we have Jeremy 101, and he asks, what's your prediction for the next coffee trend? And I have a couple that I think you're gonna see more of in 2024, and that's gonna be on the filter side. You're gonna see a lot more drippers with interchangeable bases. I know that you have the new Aurea, I think it's a V4 that has interchangeable bases. You have S-Works Designs unit that has interchangeable bases, and I think when it comes to filter, it's really hard to think of more stuff you can do with a cone. So I think what you're gonna see is more and more research and more changes on that base and maybe in the filter range. And when it comes to espresso, and not even really espresso specifically, but grinders, I think one trend you'll see ticking up in 2024. I think 2023 was the year of the variable RPM, and I think 2024 will be the year of blind burrs. And by blind burrs, I mean they don't have the little holes for screws. There's just the blades all the way around. And personally, I haven't had a ton of experience with them. I do plan on getting hold of one soon. So that's some 2024 content for you, of course. But yeah, I think those are my predictions for gear in 2024. And finally, Danny Boy P asks, what's next for Spro? Now, it's a good question. I think I have a lot of ideas and stuff bouncing around in my head canon pretty regularly. And I know I've mentioned some of this even last year that I was looking to do. I know I mentioned a podcast, which I would still love to do. I just haven't really figured out the logistics around that. I'd love to do some longer form content in like the vein of like maybe documentary style or something like that. But again, I don't really have a topic or an angle for that yet that I've sort of fell into or thought of. I do have some ideas, I guess, in the short term for content for the channel. Obviously, I know I talked about doing some stuff with the 9 Barista. I definitely want to get into some blind burr comparisons. I want to talk about lever machines more. I want to see more lever machines on the bar this coming year. But on the channel itself, I also have recently started channel memberships. I haven't really promoted them much. So channel memberships are kind of like Patreon, even though I canceled my Patreon. And I wanted to kind of condense things down here more. So if you're interested in becoming a channel member, absolutely do that, because that helps me create more content. And also channel memberships starting in 2024 will have early access to videos. So that's a cool feature. But that's pretty much it when it comes to this channel. I mean, generally I'm planning maybe about 2 months in advance. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of shoehorn things in if new stuff comes out, new ideas are brought to the surface and things like that, but also gives me a bit of stability to where I can, feel creative and not feel pressed. So there is that. I also have a second channel, which is my gaming channel, essentially, because that's all I do there. So if you're interested in gaming, I think currently or most recently I was playing Starfield, although I did kind of burn out on that pretty quickly and got very busy through the holiday season with this channel and just life. So definitely check that out. I think 2024, I'd love to post on that more regularly and get up to 1,000 subscribers on that channel, which is a doable goal, I'd say. So there's some things I'd like to do and get done, but that's pretty much all I can think of in terms of maybe what's next. Unfortunately, I don't have a ton of really focused ideas at this point, but I'm sure as they come up and as I do them, you'll be seeing them. And if you want to be a channel member, you'll probably get a closer glimpse or maybe more of a preview into them sooner rather than later. So just a little treat for you if you want to become a channel member. But other than that, I think that's pretty much all I got to say. And on that note, with a beer that's mostly empty and a head that's, tired of talking, I'm going to wrap this one up. But I do want to quickly say a big thank you to everyone who's watched my videos, whether they're here or anywhere else, who's supported me in this journey, who's interacted with me, at least hopefully in a non-problematic way, and who's helped me really turn my hobby or my passion into a job. And it's still very surreal to me 6 years into this channel and 4 years into doing this full time that I'm able to do this. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity and for the ability to be my own boss and just wake up to no alarms and be able to take 15 steps from my bedroom and this is my office. So thank you so much for that opportunity. Of course, I wouldn't be here without you. And lastly, I'd like to wish you all a very happy and healthy new year. And I hope that 2024 is full of great coffee, among other things. And with that, I will bid you farewell, and I'll see y'all next year.